Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, taking a deep dive and kind of a film session into this Tony White defense of what we saw in 2023. And Dill, the steps that you saw this Nebraska defense take under Tony White, massive in 2023. And I think what excites most Nebraska fans is, what does this scheme look like heading into 2024? Very similar situation that Michigan's defense went through over the last couple of years, where you implement a new scheme, you maybe see some growing pains, but some obvious improvements. As Michigan fans, we saw this in that 2022 and 2023 year, where they're going into year 2, year 3 of that scheme. That's when you see this unit take a jump. And Dill, if this Nebraska team can do that heading into 2024, you're looking at one of the more special defenses in the country in that 2024 year. Want to dive into some film, talk about what made Tony White's defense so successful for Nebraska in that 2023 year. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out to the Nebraska fans. This is a program, it's no secret, the boys love talking about. You guys consistently show a ton of support to the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here before we dive into the film. In your mind, what made Nebraska's defense, so special in 2023?
And I think it comes down to being able to vary their looks a little bit. And you kind of compare what they did in 22 and what they did in 23. They really played a lot of base defense in 22. And in 23, you kind of saw 3, 4, 5-man fronts, depending on what they were doing, did a lot of different things with their personnel. And that, to me, was the fundamental difference. And that's why I think it's not just like a pipe dream to say, oh, this team might get a lot better in year 2. Because, again, a lot of people say that, a lot of fans, that's kind of how we are as fans. You're like, oh, our team's going to be better. I know we're going to be better. When you go from playing a very basic 4-2, 4-3 kind of defense that they did in 2022, and you go to playing something where you need to be very fluid in what you do, you need to be able to exhibit a bunch of different skills, that's kind of hard in a sense. You've seen teams try to do it, like Brent Venables coming into Oklahoma, took a little bit of time. Michigan's new scheme after the Don Brown years took a second to really get good. Nebraska played really good year 1, maybe better than those teams arguably, but that's why I think you see a lot of jumps in those second years under these defensive coordinators, because it takes a second to grasp.
When guys get a little bit more, it's a little bit less thinking and more just reacting, right? Year 2, you're a little bit more comfortable with what your responsibilities are. And make no mistake about it, Tony White asked a lot of these guys. We talk about guys like Isaac Gifford or Javin Wright or even Deshaun Singleton before going down with the injury. These guys had so many different responsibilities, right? One snap you're playing as almost that linebacker box safety role. Another snap you're playing as a nickel defender. Another one you might be in as a free safety or blitzing off the edge. A lot of different responsibilities, a lot of different looks that you have to give. And when you get more comfortable, you start playing a little bit faster. That's when you see that jump take place. Still, want to get into the first thing that I absolutely love from Tony White. And I think it's kind of a staple of that 3-3-5 defense, where you have so much versatility on the football field. And it comes down to disguising your looks at such a high level, right? The first rep you see against Michigan State, 3rd and 9. Nebraska has 6 guys along the line of scrimmage. They're showing pressure. Michigan State thinks they're coming with pressure. You roll the film here, and they're able to, with all the versatility that they have, they're able to drop out of the blitz, right? You only end up rushing 4. Michigan State thinks you're bringing pressure. They're going to try to slip a screen out, but you dropped out, and you're just rallying to the football. Nice 3rd down stop. I think that's probably what makes this team so special. And again, you take a look at the next piece of film here, and you're looking at a 2nd and 7, very similar look in terms of, hey, we're going to put a lot of bodies along the line of scrimmage, and then you fire this film up, and we're going to bring him this time. You end up getting Ty Robinson on an H-back, quarterback pressure, throws the football away, you get off the field. You take a look at what made Nebraska so special in that 2024 year. I think it started, or 2023 year, excuse me. I think it started with disguising what you're trying to do on the defensive side of the football.
And they did a really good job with that, especially because I don't think they had that dominant pass rush from that defensive line unit at times. So that I think they did, or were able to just essentially scheme up some pressures, use that blitz, but also, you're right, not overuse it and call it at the right time and be able to drop guys when they need to. And just a lot of it wasn't that kind of sit in your base defense and let teams come after you. It was, we're going to come after offenses and put them on their heels. And I think Tony White did a really good job in that. And that's like, as a play caller, you got to do it too. You got to know when to do it. You got to know when not to play. Like, I just feel like he could sequence plays. I think he used a lot of formations and have a lot of versatility, which obviously makes it work.
And at the college football level, it's much more effective, right? You're working against quarterbacks that maybe have almost very little college football experience. They didn't see those looks in high school. In that type of defense, I think we call it kind of that NFL kind of defense in terms of different looks, different packages, is very effective at the college football level. Another thing that they do a really good job of, and Dill, I think this was something that you pointed out, is disguising their looks in the back end too. Again, similar idea where you're putting 6 guys along the line of scrimmage. You're mixing up what you're doing based on who you're playing, right? Maryland, a little bit more of a passing attack. And you roll the film here. Take a look at the safeties here at the top of your screen. You're ending up bailing Isaac Gifford out late in this play, kind of mixing up the snap or the look, mixing up the picture pre-snap to post-snap. And you roll the clip here, you know Talia wants to go to the middle of the field here to Corey Dyches. You have Marcus Buford sitting right there, taking that away. You end up getting Talia off his spot. You stretch out the play. Guys are very good at sinking in their coverages, and you end up getting a turnover. Dill, I think you disguising not only what you're doing on the front end of the defense, but what you're doing on the back end of the defense is absolutely massive.
And I loved how they used that robber look, especially because you never knew who they were dropping. They might drop their slot guy once in a while. They might drop either of the safeties that they had. And all 3 of them, I thought, really did a good job kind of being able to play that multifaceted role. And to me, I mean, you see so many teams struggle to control that middle of the field because, I mean, those are easy throws if you don't do anything about it. If you just expect your linebackers to sink into those zones and make plays with their eyes essentially in the back of their head almost, it's really, really hard to control it. I thought Tony White did a really good job using that safety as more of that robber look at times and being able to take away that middle of the field. Because if you make teams consistently beat you to the boundary and make perfect throws, like fine, they can go score their touchdowns, but you can't give up easy things in the middle. And I thought they did a really good job controlling that.
That's 100% agree with that, right? Make college football quarterbacks throw to the boundary. That's when they're getting in danger most of the time. And quite frankly, there's just not a lot of college football quarterbacks that can consistently make throws to the boundary. Now, the next thing that I was so impressed with in Nebraska was what they did in terms of run defense. And what was one of the big question marks that we had about this Tony White defense heading into 2023, specifically in the Big Ten. Can they play against the run, right? Oh, we're going to take one of our front 7 guys and put another defensive back on the field. You're nervous about what you're doing against the run. What made Nebraska, I think, so special against the run is their safeties attack the line of scrimmage extremely aggressively. You take a look at Deshaun Singleton, Dill, 2.2 yards average depth of tackle before he got hurt in the run game. What does that tell you? He's firing downhill. He's making his plays in the run game at or behind the line of scrimmage. Isaac Gifford led this Nebraska defense with 18 run stops right here on the film. This is, I think, what made this Nebraska team so special, especially against the run. You fire up the film here. What does Isaac Gifford do, right? It's right in the center of your field, sees run, runs that alley, and fits the running back right at the line of scrimmage. And it doesn't get any better than that. And know who also did a phenomenal job of this? And again, someone that I'm extremely excited for coming back after getting banged up is Deshaun Singleton, right? Very similar look. When you're going to run that 3-3-5 look, you got to have your safeties fire downhill. You roll it with Deshaun Singleton right at the top of the screen. I mean, he's triggering downhill right when he sees run, playing the outside contain, fits a tackle up. That's kind of textbook, Dill, and it's something that is extremely important when you're talking about playing that 3-3-5 scheme.
And you know what else I was always impressed with, I thought, is they played in control and they played really aggressive, but they were fitting their gaps correctly. I didn't think you saw those big creases and guys taking like run 60 yards because that's kind of the risk you run when you play aggressive. Their linebackers did it, their safeties did it, but I thought they were really good staying in their gaps, being where they were supposed to, and not playing or overrunning plays and doing some of those things that you see so many college players do. Want to go make a tackle, don't want to do their assignment necessarily. Nebraska really good in terms of discipline, really good in terms of aggression, and that's a really powerful combo because you can't have one without the other or the other without the other one.
And now the last thing that is not pretty, it's not flashy. It's not flashy like seeing a safety run the alley and make a play, but it is vital to the 3-3-5 defense. This is something that we stress. I think we're largely why we were so excited about this Nebraska defense with that 3-3-5 is you need your defensive tackles, you need your nose and Nash Hutmaker to eat up double teams. And I know he lost some weight cutting down to wrestle heavyweight for that Nebraska wrestling team. He's going to be back up to weight heading into the fall. Dill, I don't know if there's a better nose to do what Tony White wants to do than Nash in the middle of that defense. And again, this stuff is not necessarily the flashiest thing, but it's so important, right? You look at Nash, right, lined up right over the center. The whole purpose is, all right, we see that 3-3-5. We're going to try to double team Nash. We're going to try to get up to the second level. Nash's job, it's not sexy, but it's to eat that double team up and let your linebackers fill downhill. And what does Nash do? I mean, he takes a double team and puts it a yard behind the line of scrimmage. That is, again, not necessarily the flashiest play. He's not making the play here, but it is vitally important in this Nebraska defense. You fire up another piece of it, it's all over the film. I mean, again, he's not necessarily going to pad the stats with tackles for loss. Nash lined up over the center once again. What does he do? He eats through a double team. He actually ends up making a play on this one. Nash is one of those guys, I think you can say the same things with Ty Robinson in terms of who kind of made this run defense so good. Yes, the linebackers and safeties were firing downhill and making plays. Those plays don't get made without Nash and Ty up front, winning at the line of scrimmage and letting those guys get downhill.
And that's such a luxury that they have with those two.
Yes.
And obviously coming back, really excited about that, of course. But to have two guys who kind of do control that middle of the field, especially when or that middle of that run game, if you will, especially when you want to play the way Tony White does, where you have a lot of movement, you have a lot of defensive backs on the field, you need your guys in the middle to be really physical and kind of dominate. And they really do that. They stop the run themselves for the most part. They allow guys to run, kind of run the alley, kind of what we were describing, and being able to fill their gaps and make a lot of negative plays. I mean, that's what Nebraska did all year. It felt like a ton of negative plays on those runs, and it really did set the tone. So honestly, everything kind of does start at the end of the day with Nash and Ty Robinson. Those two are so dominant and so good for them. It really does allow Tony White a lot more flexibility to kind of run the defense the way he wants.
You look at the recipe for Tony White. Like, what does he want a defensive possession to look like? You win on first and second down against the run. You force teams in those third and long situations. That's when you get creative, right? You have all this different personnel on the field. You're giving different looks. You're giving different coverage in blitz packages. Now, if there's one thing – there's not many bones to pick, right, though. This is a defense that only allowed 18.3 points per game. That was 11th in the country, only 4.4 yards per play. That was number 5 in the country. If there's one thing I want to see that I think certainly can take a step in 2024 is turnovers, right? Only took the ball away 1.2 times per game. That was 100th in the country. With the amount of havoc that this Nebraska defense creates for opposing offenses, I'd like to see that number get closer to 2, be a top 20 defense in terms of turnovers per game. And you do that, and obviously limit the turnovers on the offensive side of the football. This is going to win a lot of football games for Nebraska in 2024. Really excited about the year 2 jump. We certainly expect it as these guys get more comfortable in that Tony White scheme. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Disclaimer, if you guys have any other kind of film breakdowns for Nebraska that you would like to see the boys do, drop them in the comments section. Appreciate you guys always rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.